Hi, and welcome back to Act on Mental Health. My name is Sean Hardy, and I'm a licensed mental health counselor based here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Now, on this channel, I talk about acceptance and commitment therapy, and for those that are wanting to learn ACT. So, whether you're a therapist in graduate school or a client or somebody who's wanting to learn more on how to help with your mental health struggles, this channel is for you. Now, over the next 10 videos, I'm going to walk you through what I'm calling the ACT roadmap. Now, this is a complete 10-session guide that teaches you how to open up to difficult feelings, how to become more aware in the present moment, and how to engage in a life that's guided by our values. Now, ACT is not protocol driven, it's process formed. And so these six core processes really inform an ACT therapist on how to deal with a variety of issues. So I am using a protocol here, and it's not that ACT is anti-protocol. It's just that ACT doesn't look at the necessarily diagnostic categories like depression, anxiety, and so forth, and think that this is the only way that you can really solve this problem. ACT can be applied universally to a variety of conditions, and it's really up to the ACT therapist to know how to move forward with a client because it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. I have created this ACT roadmap because I know if I were in your position just starting out in ACT or really not fluent in ACT, I don't know my way around, I would want an ABC approach. I would want like, hey, do this in session 1, do this in session 2, all the way through session 10. Now, when I was starting out in ACT, I had a manual that I found on how ACT treats depression, and I had it literally like in front of me like this, and I was just reading from it, on different sections and trying to do therapy. Now, if you're in the client's position, there was a disconnect. Every time I was reading, felt like they were disconnecting from me, right? So I learned as I was doing ACT the hard way that you can't just read from a script. I mean, you have to embody this stuff. It's not that you have to memorize everything, but it needs to come across as something that you practice, that you live, that you believe in, at least for it to be effective. So this ACT roadmap is not going to solve all those problems. You're not going to read from it, but it's going to give you, just kind of put it in the front of your mind before you get into a session of like, hey, if I need to focus on willingness, these are the things that I need to include. And you have the option of adapting, and as you get to know the lay of the land, you're going to find your own way forward, and it's going to be great. But until you get there, use this ACT roadmap if you're a therapist or a graduate student, and let me know if how it goes for you, if it helps you to do your work more effectively. Now, if you're a client, this will serve as reinforcement for you. I usually include about a 10-minute window in there, maybe 10 to 20 minutes, especially in the first few sessions, where I provide psychoeducation, and I need a resource for clients to be pointed to so that they can remember the things that I've shared, and maybe I didn't have enough time to include all the bits and pieces. So I want to make sure that they have an ACT roadmap as well. So kind of a long introduction, but kind of getting you up to speed on where we're going to be going in these videos. Now, there's 3 phases that I tend to go through with clients, and I may start in phase 1, or I may start in phase 2, or I may start in phase 3. A lot of times I start in phase 1, as it really gets to where the problem is. Now, what are these phases? Well, these divide the 6 core processes into 3 parts, or 3 phases. So you have open in phase 1. So this includes contact with the present moment and acceptance. Basically, willingness to experience whatever is showing up right now. So open is phase 1. Phase 2 is going to be self as context. Mindfulness is in there. And this is going to be really important to kind of like all the things that are showing up. So you have cognitive diffusion in there, kind of being able to notice your thoughts and feelings and know that you are not your thoughts. You are not your feelings. You're the one who observes them. And so that helps you become aware. And when you're aware, you can be flexible, meaning you're not going to automatically follow whatever the thought suggests or the feeling suggests. There'll be more of that. I'll get more into that when we get to those sessions. And then there's phase 3, which is engage. This is where you have values and committed action. So we're going to talk about what's important to you and how to get there. What are those committed actions that we need to be, I guess, going towards, even if the unpleasant or unhelpful thoughts and feelings are there. So those are the 3 phases. So a lot of times I start in phase 1, and you're going to see why as I go through this. All right, so phase 1 is control, or the paradox of control. Why struggling actually makes suffering worse. And the way that I kind of go about this is I kind of have some aims that I'm kind of internally checking off. I want to see by the end of this session these things. I want to see that many control strategies, they backfire, and the things that we attempt as short-term solutions end up having long-term consequences and costs. So I want the client to know that. I want to begin to question the agenda of just getting rid of thoughts and feelings. It seems like our culture just really pushes that. I mean, all the prescription advertisements, it's all about getting rid or decreasing negative thoughts and feelings. But I want to question that agenda. Next, I want them to experience, not just understand the limits of control. I want them to really feel this in their bones, that they can't just control everything. There are things outside of them that they cannot get control of. And the things that are happening inside of them operate by different law than whatever works in the external world. And then the last thing I want is them to open up that door to willingness or acceptance-based strategies as an alternative. All right, so this is kind of what I do, kind of in the back of my mind of how I'm trying to organize this session. Now, for therapists, this is sometimes we call it a session that can produce some cognitive dissonance in your client, and it's whenever you're bringing up creative hopelessness, and so you have to position it well, especially for like depressed clients or clients with high anxiety. They will not like creative hopelessness. They will not like being in contact with hopelessness. So just kind of put that in the back of your mind as I go through those. All right, so what we are trying first, and this is different than the intake, is I want to know what they have tried in solving their particular problem. All right, now they're going to mention a bunch of good things, but I want them to also mention the things that have gotten in the way or the things that have not worked. So right now we're going to be using it as an exhaustive list. Now you can write these down, as you go. But what I like to do is I like to say, hey, do you mind if I use the whiteboard? And I'll just jot down a few things. And I write on the whiteboard, what have I tried? And as they talk, I kind of put a few things on the board. I put, first of all, strategy. So what are the strategies that I've used? So for some of them, maybe they've tried, distraction. Maybe they've tried medications. Or maybe they're honest with you and they say, I've tried substances. Something to try to help me to sleep at night, or something to help me feel a little bit less socially anxious. Maybe they've tried some good things like, let's say, exercise. Maybe they've tried breathing techniques. What else? They may have tried therapy. I guess they're here. Maybe they tried therapy before. You're going to list a bunch of things. And so right now, I just kind of want you to see just what it looks like on my end, that I'm, as a therapist, just kind of documenting some things that they've tried. And I want them to see it. Let's say maybe video games. We'll add those on there. Friends. That could be one, and family. These are some common ones that I see. What I'll ask them before I go any further is I say, what has been effective? Like, what would you say has really worked to help with this issue? So they might say, well, distraction, that's helped. Maybe medications, they haven't helped as much. So I'll put a star by distraction and a minus by medications. They'll say probably substances, yes, but it also had its drawbacks. Obviously, if it worked, I would do more of it, but there's also problems with that. And maybe they say, yeah, breathing works pretty effectively. And maybe therapy. Let's say they're back again because therapy has been helpful. All right, so once I kind of see that they've at least listed a couple things that they can say have worked pretty good, the next thing I'm going to try to evaluate is, okay, tell me about the short term. What did it do to help you in the short term? Okay, so for distractions, well, the distractions, I felt relief. Okay, we'll put that on there. And what about in the long term? What happened in the long term? Well, it always came back. So I'm going to put came back. Sometimes it comes back harder. Sometimes it just comes back. It never goes away forever. Medications, why didn't those work? I guess what did they do in the short term? Well, I felt less. But also long term, I felt less. So, okay, that's interesting. What about substances? You said that they were effective, but they weren't. What do you mean by that? Well, they helped me feel numb. Okay, and less anxious. Okay, I'll put those on here. What about long term? Costs too much. Too much money. They also, made me kind of a zombie when I was around other people. Okay. What about breathing? Well, yeah, it helped me feel calm, but the breathing hasn't solved it. Okay, so it didn't completely fix things. All right. What about therapy? Yeah, therapy helped, helped me to, maybe reframe things, feel better. Okay. Well, why didn't it work long term? Well, it helped, but it seemed like those thoughts just continued to be a problem. If I could just fix those thoughts. All right, if you're following along, I'm going to be starting to get quite the list here. And this is helpful for clients to see it laid out. Now, for your client, it'll look different. Or for you as a client, it'll look different. But I want you to start to evaluate the long term versus the short term. And what you'll start to see is the costs of the problems. What has it kept you from? And that's where, as a clinician, I'll start to get some important values there. All right, so after I'm done with this, I briefly introduce control as the problem. So this is how I might do that. Control seems to work in a lot of areas. For example, when I come into my office in the morning, sometimes another therapist has used my office space, and they might have left out the blankets, the pillows are disheveled, maybe there's something written on the whiteboard. And when I come in the morning, I got maybe 5-10 minutes before the session starts, and I might feel really anxious, and maybe just unorganized, out of place. But I know I can do something about that. I can clean up the room, I can wipe the whiteboard, and I can get myself ready for the next session. And we kind of think that that's the way it's going to work with our internal issues. We think it works like it does in the external world, where we can just go about cleaning up things, fixing things out there, and somehow that'll help me internally. But we find that there's a paradox. It doesn't work in the same way. And that's because there are limits to control. If control worked in all situations, we would use it and not have the problems that we have. But we know that that's not the case. Now, Stephen Hayes, who pioneered acceptance and commitment therapy, he says that the more that you don't want something, the more you have it. And what he meant by that is the more that you try to push it out, you try to just, I don't want this, and I keep fighting it and keep kind of controlling it, the more that you actually have it. You see, there's no delete button on our thoughts, at least I haven't found one. I can't go in there and just tweak some things around internally and all of a sudden feel a lot better. And I think sometimes people come into therapy thinking that this will help me control whatever I'm feeling. So that's either less depressed, less sadness, or maybe more fulfillment. But if we are tied to this idea that control is going to work, it'll actually get in the way. And the way I want to show you that is through a little exercise. Actually, it's a little activity where I want to put you in a strange situation. So before we start, I want to make sure that I say this. I'm going to be putting you into contact with maybe feeling a little more hopelessness. And since you're already feeling pretty hopeless, I just want you to be warned that this is maybe going to make you feel a little worse, but it's in the service of helping you to feel better in the long term. Are you okay if we do this strange experiment? Okay, so this is where it works. I'm going to put you in a strange situation where you are a part of a game show, and I am the game master. And I have brought you to this chain link fence with this gate in, and I have blindfolded you. All you know is that there is a field in front of you, and you have to find this treasure. And if you find it, you get to keep all of it. So I put on a backpack, and I put that on your back, and I open up the gate, and there you go. Well, as you get stepping forward, you realize that this isn't just a field, but this is a field with a hole in it. And so you feel around and you feel yourself starting to fall, and you thankfully save yourself. Well, as you continue to navigate, you realize that there's slippery footing everywhere. And eventually you fall into one of these holes, and you fall down into a deep, deep hole. So you're there at the bottom of this hole, and it's dark, and I want to know, what would you do if you found yourself in this deep hole? This is where a client might say, well, I would take off my blindfold. Okay, so you take off your blindfold, and you see a light, a little circle light, and it's way up there, and you have fallen down pretty deep. What's the next thing you would do? Well, I'd take off my backpack. I'd see what's in there. All right, so you take off your backpack, and as you empty it out, you see there's nothing but shovels. There's 4 shovels that you have been given. All right, so what would you do with those shovels? What would you do from here? Well, they start coming up with ideas. Well, let's see, I would maybe try to dig my way out. And every time that they say something, I'll say something back like, and if you try to dig yourself out, yeah, you're going to realize this. There's so much dirt. You're never going to get yourself out. So you stop that approach. What else would you do? Well, I maybe would stick it into the side and maybe try to, use it as a ladder to try to get myself out. Okay, you try that and it still doesn't work. What next? Well, eventually they start running out of ideas. They might say things like, well, I would cry out and see if the game master would, somebody would come save me. Okay, you do that. Nothing happens. So eventually they're just sitting there in a dark hole. Just feeling what that feels like. Feels kind of hopeless, doesn't it? Well, let's say that as the game master, I come back to you in the hole and I say, oh man, I see that you've fallen into this hole. Here, I'll give you something that might help. And I pull out a gold-plated shovel. This is one of a kind. There is no shovel like this shovel. It's the best shovel available. So I give you this gold-plated shovel. What would you do next? They look at me kind of strange. Wow, I mean, what does this shovel do? So they might try to dig, but it's not going to help them. It's still futile. And I say something like, a lot of people come to therapy and they kind of look to the therapist to give them this gold-plated shovel, this therapy technique that is going to completely revolutionize how they handle their mental health struggle or their problem. But if they're using it to dig, don't you see that there is a problem with that? So let's say I give you a ladder. I give you a ladder, you're able to get out. What would you do with that ladder? They look at me kind of strange, like, well, I would probably just try to climb out. I'm like, as silly as this sounds, if I gave you this ladder, you would probably just use that ladder to dig. Because if that is the agenda, to dig your way out, to use everything like you would a shovel, you will continue to be in that problem. This is what I mean by control as the problem. If you use everything as a control strategy, so whether that's distractions, medications, substances, or even good things like exercise, breathing, therapy, if you use even the good things and you use it to try to control what's internal, you will continue to find yourself stuck. So this, as a therapist, this is what I'm trying to do. I want to bring the client into contact with creative hopelessness so that they understand that there is a problem that's bigger than anything that they can find a solution to. And this is going to open them up to the next part. This is where I give them another metaphor. I say, I'm going to put you in another kind of strange situation. Let's say you're playing a cosmic game of tug of war. On one end is your problem, this monster of anxiety. All right, it's on the other side of this chasm, and there's you on the other side. And as you look down, there's no bottom to this chasm. So you have to fight with all your might. And so you struggle, you pull and pull and pull, and find your strength getting zapped. Now you have three options. So do you know what the options are? Well, whatever they say, I can fill in the blanks. I'm like, well, if you pull harder, you're going to continue to pull and pull and pull, and eventually your strength's going to give out. Well, you could give in, but you can only give in to a certain point before you completely fall in. So a lot of people are in this pull and give in situation. The third option is not so obvious, and that's to let go of the rope. You see, we don't even see that as an option because our whole life, maybe you would agree, has become about this problem. It's about this struggle. And the struggle is often the problem. So learning to let go. How do we do that? Practically speaking, what does it mean to let go? Well, before I answer that, I want to give you one more scenario. You and I, for whatever reason, we're going to do therapy in Australia. Now, we've gone out west to the deserts and we're going in this wilderness journey, and you and I are on this journey. Well, you get ahead of me and you find yourself knee-deep in quicksand. Now, have you ever been in quicksand before? Neither have I. But let's say that we're there and you're in quicksand. Now, you learn real quick that you are stuck. What would you do next? Often the answer is, well, I would struggle and try to get out. Yeah, but if you try to get out, what do you think would happen as you lift one leg to get out and take a step? What would happen to the other leg? Well, it'd probably go down further. Let's say that you learn real quick that this struggling isn't helping. Now you're about knee to waist deep into this quicksand. Let's say that I come alongside of you and say, hey, I see that you're in quicksand. I actually know how to get out. I saw this Bear Grylls YouTube video, and he showed us how to survive in situations like this. So this is what you have to do. You have to lay down flat. All right, can you do that for me? Lay down flat and I'll tell you the next step. And then I ask him, now, you and I haven't known each other very long, but would you trust me and just follow my advice? You'd probably think like, hey, you want me to get closer to my problem? What are you, crazy? You want me to get closer to what's bringing me under? But surprisingly, I have clients that say, yeah, I would trust you. I don't know what, I mean, I'm stuck. I don't know what else I would do. But let's say you don't necessarily trust me right away. And I explain, well, the way that this works is kind of like you're on a trampoline. The more surface area that your body takes, the less it will go under. You actually kind of take up the surface area. What that'll allow you to do is then to army crawl or roll out. At this point, you start to get with the idea that, okay, if I lay flat, I'll have more options. So you lay flat and you find yourself actually getting a little bit lighter. You're not going under. This allows you then to start to roll out. So this is what I want you to think about. There's a counterintuitive approach that acceptance and commitment therapy asks of us. And that's what if we didn't struggle? And what if we learn to lean in and allow ourselves the freedom to have another choice? This alternative strategy is something I refer to as acceptance-based strategies. So we've talked about the control side of things, but what does it look like to accept, to let go of the rope, to lay down so that we can have the option of going forward and getting out of our struggle? So this is where we end this first session. So we would have been able to really lay in the foundation of the control as the problem and start getting to a reframe of the goals of therapy. So at this point, it's no longer to not struggle and not to have problems. It's not how do I get rid of anxiety, but it's how do I live well with anxiety present? Like if I can lean into anxiety, what else might I be able to do? If, instead of trying to get rid of the sadness and depression before I get out, what if I was able to lean into it so that I could have the openness and flexibility to do something different? So this is where we really start to introduce willingness. And this is where I'm just planting a seed of, are you willing to try something different? Are you willing to try a counterintuitive approach? So this is where I might give some homework, where I start to have them start to notice when they're trying to control things, and noticing the costs, noticing the short term and the long term. And I might even ask them to do a mini experience. So instead of fighting their feelings, just opening up, for 60 seconds or so, and just noticing what happens when they stay with it. So that concludes session 1, and now they're ready for session 2. We'll start to learn how to unhook from our thoughts so that we can diffuse and get into our life. Remember, your journey towards a more purposeful and mindful life begins with a single click.